Peace, 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 peace. Once again, here we are live, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and those who listen, and those who share this live, this video. Uh, I appreciate it. I would also ask those of you who are watching it on YouTube to like the video so we can get the algorithms up, to share it, and to subscribe to my channel. I actually have another channel with a similar name that I'll be transferring some of this content from this channel to that channel on, so that way I can actually monetize, or that channel be monetized, because this channel right here, I can't monetize it because I've used some copyrighted material. I'm still getting familiar with the rules of YouTube. But anyway, so this is a subject that, well, the title of this live, rather, is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's view or teaching on sodomy, aka homosexuality. And this is something that I'm addressing based on a post that I saw inside of the fan page of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad group. I think that's the name of it. And wherein Minister Louis Farrakhan was quoted as saying, let me get the quote right here. Just bear with me one moment. He was quoted as saying, quote, "To my LGBTQ family, let me tell you something. Those of us who are students of Elijah Muhammad, we are in love with our people. We don't ask you what your sexual preference is. We love you. We are not your judges. We want to work together to free our people completely. So, to my family, this is my family. You will never find me or us condemning you for what has become of us in our sojourn, cause all the quote-unquote holy ones will point to a gay brother or sister are fornicators, adulterers, freaks, and everything else. So who of us can throw a stone at the next one? None of us, and the greatest example of that is Jesus himself," end quote. Now, this is Louis Farrakhan's, the quote was attributed towards him. I believe I heard him say that, but I'm going to, because I believe I heard him say it, or I might recall, and I don't have the actual citation, I'm going to say this alleged quote. I like to be as exact as possible, right? Now, that's his position, to which I disagree 100%. We're going to now juxtapose that with the Messenger Elijah Muhammad's position on homosexuality, and those of our people who are homosexuals. Let me see, I am actually looking for, okay, here it is. This right here is titled "The Messenger's Teaching on Teaching Our Children About Homosexuality." It's an excerpt from the Messenger Elijah Muhammad's Table Talks dated August 23rd, 1968. It was transcribed. So, herein the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad states, quote, "God has taught us how to contend with the devil, and I want to teach you. Children in school are wise and behave proudly, acting strange, and this is because it is prophesied, and the best way to contend with it is to separate them from the good ones, and study the bad one, and stop him by exposing him in the eyes of others." Pause. Before I continue on further with the quote, I just want to put this disclaimer out there that this is a transcribe, so it's not exact, perfect English. So, continue on. He says, quote, this is what he tells his followers to do with homosexual children. He says, quote, "I want you to know that if you follow after this one, I'm going to find a way to punish you. And I warn all of you, if I catch one of you practicing this evil, then I'm going to punish you, and your parents are with me, and I'm going to tell them what a nasty, child you are, and you are not fit for Islam nor Christianity. You are only fit for hellfire. And if one of you see him wrong, I am going to punish you and tell your deeds in front of all of them, and that will make them feel cheap. Keep them separate from lost founds, because those will spoil our children. Use same method for older children. See this girl over here? She wants her for her sweetheart. See this little boy over here? He wants him for his wife. See those boys over there? They are not natural. They are savages. They want to be sweethearts with each other. These are the type Allah wants to burn up. Teach them all they can take in wisdom, but never give them more than they can take. End quote. Now, what I just quoted was Elijah Muhammad's words, the messenger, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad's words and positions on homosexuality, particularly in regards to teaching children. Now, before I continue further, I want to say that the messenger said that this message is not for the cowards. He said this in message to the black man. So therefore, if you are sensitive, then before I continue, and maybe I should have put this disclaimer before I started, if you are sensitive and are easily offended, you should probably turn away from this podcast and also unfollow and unfriend me. This is not for your ears. However, if you are for the truth and pro the truth and love the truth, even if your regardless of whatever your circumstances are, even if you are or have engaged in homosexuality or whatever the case is, but you still are a person who loves the truth, because there are many people out here who may not be in accord with truth or certain aspects of truth, but still love and will bear witness to truth regardless. Now, going back to what I was saying, if you are sensitive or are emotional, or if you are afraid, or if you are one of those PC Muslims, or PC meaning politically correct, so-called righteous or religious persons, then I would advise you to turn away from this. My approach to truth is I have a no strings attached, no nonsense approach to truth. It is not personal. It is never personal. There are people in my family and relatives of mine, people that I've grown up with, worked with, went to school with, who, when I speak certain truths, are not in line with certain truths. Put it simply, there are people that I know personally who are homosexual. Some are even on my page and on my friends list. My message is not personal towards them. It has nothing to do with them personally. My speaking truth is I'm speaking objectively, truth in general, for everyone to hear, those in my listening audience to hear, so that way they can make the right decision and better themselves. If I were to water it down for the sake of your feelings, I am robbing those who are listening and want the truth and would seek to benefit from truth and would benefit from truth. I am robbing them of the opportunity to benefit from truth and improve their lives and possibly save their lives, just because you are in your feelings. And me, I don't operate that way. So again, I have a no nonsense, no strings attached approach to truth. It's never personal. It's just straight objective truth. And if you are easily offended, then I think you should turn away, unfollow, unsubscribe, and unfriend me. But anyway, continuing on. So let's actually take apart what the messenger just stated on homosexuality, teaching our children about homosexuality. He said, God has taught us how to contend with the devil, and I want to teach you. Let's pause. So now, yes, he's actually taught us how to contend with the devil, how to contend with the 10%, the wickedly wise, because they have been able to rule through deception for thousands of years, uncontended, uncontested. But yet, we've had a supreme being come among us to teach us supreme knowledge, supreme wisdom, and therefore to allow us into our supreme understanding. And now we know how to contend with the highest form of technology. We know how to contend with the arch deceiver because we are dealing with arch truths. Oh, before I continue on, I want to say that I'm not able to see the comments right now, but if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please share them. I will get to them after the podcast. So, continuing on, the messenger says here, children in school are wise and behave proudly, acting strange, and this is because it is prophesied, and the best way to contend with it is to separate them from the good ones and study the bad one and stop him by exposing him in the eyes of others. Pause. Now we're going to elaborate on that statement, right? Yes, it has been prophesied. We can read the scriptures and we can read the sacred texts that talked about in the last days the strange acting and the boys acting like girls and the girls acting like boys and just the degeneracy and dysfunction in general that would seemingly become commonplace amongst the people, right? So this is something that was prophesied, and he said that the best way to contend with it is pause. So now he's giving us the best way, not just a way, nor is he saying it's the only way. He's saying it's the best way. Best is a comparison, which means there are many ways, but this is the best way. I'm going to show and prove why it's the best and most effective way. The best way to contend with it is to separate them from the good ones and study the bad one. Pause. Separate them from the good ones. Why must there be a separation? You know, if we look at fruit, you know, you can take a rotten apple or a bad apple or an apple with mold or fungus, and you can put it with fresh apples, and then all the other apples that catch mold and fungus. We know let me not even say historically, we know from current events and just from contemporary realities that children in today's public schools are going around committing acts of sex on other children. So in other words, these children are committing abuse on other children, but the children that are committing the abuse are children that were abused themselves by either some other children or who were abused or by some adult. So the children in the public schools, a lot of, are seeing this, and this is what's taking place in the public schools. So you have abused children going out and just carrying out their abuse on other children. They're spreading it, not really knowing what the full ramifications of what they're doing, but you have abused children abusing other children. And this is why if you want to protect the children who have not been abused, or if you want to protect your children from abuse, you must separate the abuser from the rest. You must separate the bad apple from the good apples, or the spoiled, rotten fungus apples from the other apples. Well, continuing on. So he says the best way to contend with it is to separate them from the good ones and study the bad one. Look at what he said, study the bad one. Study. You got to study. Study what caused it. Study the cause of this. When we study things, we study cause and effect. Usually we'll see that there was an adult somewhere that abused this child, and we can get to the root of it and handle that problem and stop him from abusing others. Continuing on. He says, and stop him by exposing him in the eyes of others. Now, what does exposing do? It highlights the activity in front of the eyes of others. Now, original people, I'm talking about black children, black people, original people by nature are righteous people. I said nature and not nurture, because by nature, meaning our genetic core, we are righteous and we harmonize with truth and righteousness, but by nurture, have been made into something totally different, particularly here in the wilderness of North America. Now, continuing on, being that the truth is in our nature at your very core, and I'm sure even those who are homosexuals or identify themselves as homosexuals will bear witness to this at their very core, regardless of how you make it, this makes you feel, you know in your heart of hearts that it is true. But continuing on, because original people are righteous by nature, when you expose the deviant one who's doing unrighteous deeds, the deviant child that's doing unrighteousness, it'll touch the nature of those children. And children, at their core, they're more in tune with their righteous nature because they have had less conditioning, less, what's the word I'm looking for? Less, they were less, they had less time to be corrupted and, for corruption and accumulation to, I'm sorry, for corruption to accumulate and for conditioning from mainstream society to accumulate with them. But anyway, continuing on. So if you expose him, as it says, exposing him in the eyes of the others, I want you to know that if you follow this one, I'm going to find a way to punish you. And I warn you, all of you, if I catch one of you practicing this evil, look at the words, then I'm going to punish you, and your parents are with me, and I'm going to tell them what a nasty child you are, and you are not fit for Islam nor Christianity. Period. Pause. Now, this right here, when you bring that up and you were to expose the deviant child in front of the children that had not been abused or the natural children, this would touch the nature of those natural children, and you're actually setting a precedent and planting a seed in them in their early stage, in their early stages, that early childhood development that would stick with them for life. It's a good seed because that seed actually will germinate with and harmonize with their righteous nature. It's not planting a seed that will cause them to deviate or cause confusion in them. It is planting a seed that actually harmonizes with their righteous nature. And if you plant that seed in them from the early, from the jump, or in their early stages, that seed is going to nurture into a root, a flower, a plant, a tree, a forest, and a whole entire world. Anyway, continuing on, without me talking in circles. He said, I want you to know that if you follow after this one, I'm going to find a way to punish you. And I warn all of you, if I catch one of you practicing this evil, look at the word he used, then I'm going to punish you, and your parents are with me, and I'm going to tell them what a nasty child you are, and you are not fit for Islam or Christianity. You are only fit for hellfire. And if one of you see him wrong, I'm going to punish you and tell your deeds in front of all of them, and that will make them feel cheap. So, pause. So, the objective of this aspect, of this method of dealing with homosexual behavior amongst children, is to make them feel cheap. Now, I know some of you are going to say, why would you make children feel cheap? No, we're not saying we're making children feel cheap. We're making deviant, unnatural, savage, abused children who are carrying out unnatural and savage behavior. Yes, they should feel cheap for their activity and the behavior that they are engaging in, so that way they won't continue to do it. Please do not come and try to defend the behavior in the name of defending the child, because in doing so, you will be propagating that child's behavior, and you would actually be aiding and abetting the spreading of abuse, childhood abuse, by encouraging or allowing that child to go on and further abuse others. So please, we have to stop the politically correctness and get back in line with nature and righteousness and see the bigger picture. You are concerned with one child. Oh, you're exposing and making one child feel cheap, yet you're saving the rest. You're saving 20, 30, 40. Let's look at mathematics, okay? So he continues on. He says, keep them separate from lost founds. Yes, you have to separate them, because those will spoil our children. Pause. Remember what I stated about the rotten apples and the rotten fruit? That's not just a saying. If any of you, that's not a saying, that's a scientific reality. If any of you have ever had a batch of fresh apples and you put one rotten apple in that had mold or whatever in, that mold and that fungus and those spores are going to spread and it's going to spoil all the other apples. So you have to separate. Keep the rotten apples separate from the fresh ones. Continuing on. So I'm going to go back. He said, keep them separate from lost fowls because those will spoil our children. Use the same method for older children. Quote, see this girl over here? She wants her for her sweetheart. See this little boy over here? He wants him for his wife. See, those boys over there, they are not natural. They are savages. They want to be sweethearts with each other. These are the type Allah wants to burn up. Pause. So, yes, it actually does shame. That would actually shame boys, natural boys, and it would actually put fear in them from actually want to go that way or entertain any unnatural, deviant thought that might be interjected in them by someone from the outside. So they want to be sweethearts with each other. See this little boy over here? He wants him for his wife. Doesn't that sound cheapening? Yes, it does. What man wants to be called a wife? So yes, these are effective techniques. He said this is the best way to contend with it. Continuing on, he said, see those boys over there? They are not natural. And that's correct because it's an unnatural behavior. I'm going to elaborate on that in just a second. They are savages. They want to be sweethearts with each other. These are the type Allah wants to burn up. Tell them all they can take in wisdom, but never give them more that they can take. Or he says, teach them all they can take in wisdom, but never give them more they can take. Now, I'm going to I'm going to go back to Minister Farrakhan's statement on homosexuality, and I'm just going to critique that. Okay, I'm looking for it right now. Just bear with me one moment. Okay, here it is. Or the statement that was attributed to him. Let me correct myself. Hold on. Where is it? Just passed it. Okay, here it is. Quote, this is the statement that was attributed to Minister Louis Farrakhan. Quote, to my LGBTQ family, let me tell you something. Those of us who are students of Elijah Muhammad, we are in love with our people. We don't ask you what your sexual preference is. We love you. We are not your judges. We want to work together to free our people completely. So to my family, this is my family. You will never find me or us condemning you for what has become of us in our sojourn, because all the quote-unquote, look what he said, all the quote-unquote holy ones will point to a gay brother or sister, who will point to a gay brother or sister are fornicators, adulterers, freaks, and everything else. So who of us can throw a stone at the next one? None of us. And the greatest example of that is Jesus himself, end quote. Now, let's piece that apart. I'm going to offer a critique this. And for some of y'all that in y'all feelings, get out of your feelings. This is not a disrespect. This is a critique, okay? Learn the difference between the two. So his first error is where he stated, those of us who are students of Elijah Muhammad, we are in love. Who's calling? He said, those of us who are students of Muhammad, we are in love with our people. We don't ask you what your sexual preference is. We love you. We are not your judges. We want to work together to free our people completely. So then he goes on to say, so you will never find me or us condemning you for that, etc., etc. Now, I'm going to say this. First of all, there's no such thing as any one person who can speak for we, the students of Elijah Muhammad, because we, the students of Elijah Muhammad, have studied his words, and those of us who are in agreement with his position are in agreement with his position as was stated earlier. So he cannot speak and does not speak for those. Louis Farrakhan in this context only speaks for himself. He speaks for those of his followers that are in agreement with him. And I have to state that because there are many people in his own organization that do not share that perspective. So he can only and is only speaking for himself and those who agree with him. He said we. So there's no we. We're not, this is We're not speaking French. This is English. This is not we here. You know, that we is not inclusive of those of us who study and adhere to Elijah Muhammad's direct words and teachings on the subject. So then he continues on. He says, you will never find me or us, he should take the us out, condemning you for what has become of us in our sojourn. Pause. The messenger himself has condemned those of our people who engage in homosexuality. He said that they were not, he said that they were nasty. He said that they were not fit for Islam or Christianity, and that they were only fit for hellfire. Hellfire, damnation, condemnation. The messenger condemned those of our people who engage in homosexuality. So that was another error on his part. He says, you will never find me or us condemning you for what has become of us in our sojourn, because all, look what he said, all the quote unquote holy ones who will point to a gay brother or sister are fornicators. So you mean to tell me that every person, every single person who doesn't agree with homosexuality or who condemns homosexuality or condemn the activity of a man or woman who is homosexual is a fornicator, or every single one has fornicated? Then he used the term adulterers. You mean to tell me every single person who's critiqued and even condemned homosexuality and its adherents are adulterers? All? Really? Do you know every single one who has condemned this? No, you can only speak for yourself, and I believe he is speaking for himself. Then he used the term freaks. Well, how do you define freak? Do you mean to tell me all those who condemn homosexuality are freaks? A freak means something that goes contrary to nature. That's what a freak truly is. You mean to tell me all those who condemn homosexuality and those who practice it go contrary to nature? Really? But they're condemning something that goes contrary to nature themselves. Which one is it, Mr. Farrakhan? And everything else. So then he says, so who of us can throw a stone at the next one? None of us. Pause. This is not throwing stones. This is casting truth. If casting truth is throwing stones, what did Malcolm X said? He said, if you throw a stone at a pack of dogs, the dog that yell is the dog that get hit. I'm paraphrasing. The dog that yell is a dog that got hit. Okay, so if you cast truth at someone, right? Truth, that's not casting a stone. That's not casting a stone. That's truth. A stone is something that you would duck from. Why would you consider or label truth a stone to duck from? Why would you even identify or call truth or put it in the same category as a stone that's being cast at you that you need to duck from? No, Mr. Farrakhan. You don't duck from truth. Only a fool would duck from truth when truth is hurled at him. A wise person would duck from a stone if a stone was hurled at him, because the stone is meant to harm him. Then he says, and the greatest example of that is Jesus himself. Pause, end quote. Now we all know that the mainstream Christian church is accepting and embracing of homosexuality. Why? It's for two reasons: for profit, and many of the people in the positions of leadership are homosexuals themselves. We all know. Look at the Catholicism, the Catholic Church, all the scandals. You can just look at some of the black churches here in the United States. You know, so they all push Jesus, but they don't push the actual Jesus of the scripture. They push some milquetoast, watered down, whitewash, emasculated faggot or simp or softy as an excuse to support their emasculation agenda. So Jesus, in this context, to support homosexuality or to not condemn or to support men and women who are homosexuals and make them feel good, that's not the Jesus of the scriptures. So here's an example of Louis Farrakhan using Jesus out of context and going contrary, directly opposite to Elijah Muhammad's positions on the subject. And that in and of itself, I don't have an issue with it. I don't have an issue with that because that's his position. But what must be understood is that Louis Farrakhan's position on this subject in particular and on any subject in general is just that. It's Louis Farrakhan's position. It may or may not be the same as Elijah Muhammad's position. Yes, there is a difference between the two, and it must be pointed out. The quote unquote Nation of Islam's position on certain things may or may not be the same as Elijah Muhammad's teachings on certain things, because the nation, quote unquote, Nation of Islam of today does not adhere to Elijah Muhammad's teachings. And that is a general statement. So, that being said, I'm going to close with this. I'm going to close out. You find it. I'm going to close out with this statement. And now that this truth has been pointed out to you, you can do what you want to do with it. You know, you could accept it or you can let it alone, but you can't refute it because it's truth. So I want to say here, watering down the truth repels the strong and attracts the weak. The Bible, pause. This is for those who say things or say that homosexuality is a sin just like any other sin. Let me bust that up right now. Watering down the truth repels the strong and attracts the weak. The Bible does not call homosexuality a sin. It classifies homosexuality in the same category with pork and labels it an abomination, which is sin on steroids. Abomination, not just sin, abomination, which is sin on steroids. No healthy heterosexual man would even think about equating homosexuality with a sin such as lying, stealing, or quote unquote falling victim to the lust of the opposite sex. Most of us have told a lie before. Some of us have stolen before. And a lot of us men have messed around with women whom we shouldn't have outside of the proper circumstances, which is contractual obligation or marriage, before. Those sins, quote unquote, are motivated by the natural instinct and drive for self-preservation. Those drives just weren't disciplined. That's all. But homosexuality is completely unnatural. The messenger even said so in his example that I shared earlier. The only quote unquote males who equate the abomination called sodomy or homosexuality with quote unquote any other sin are either heterosexual pulpit hustlers attempting to water down the truth to gain converts by appeasing weak and wicked people, or are inclined towards such weakness and wickedness themselves and view it as an act of lust, just the same as fornication and adultery. When I see so-called righteous adult males making excuses for this abomination, not just mere sin, I am reminded that the ranks of the so-called righteous may be swelled with closet homosexuals. The religious houses, no, garbage. The churches here, particularly in America, garbage. The mosques, garbage. The temples, synagogues, garbage. What you need and what will actually elevate you, you can find it directly in the sources themselves. Holy Quran, Bible, so-called Abrahamic texts, Elijah Muhammad's direct teachings, etc. But we know that the religious houses, the churches, the mosques, the temples, they don't even go or abide by the source. They have their own agendas, which are usually motivated by money and or political purposes. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad stated on June 4th, 1972 in his Theology of Time lecture series that in that day, I'm paraphrasing, You won't need to go to a certain place or a certain place or a house point. What he said, you won't need to go to a certain place pointing out a house with truth in it. You'll be the truth. You'll be a temple yourself. So yeah, I understand that the place that the churches, the temples, and the mosques have in today's society, just like I understand the role that, let's say, kale plays in society, right? Now, just like, or the role chicken plays. Now, kale is not good for you. Chicken is not good for you, right? But the person that has been eating pork every day all their lives, for them, chicken or kale would actually be an upgrade, right? But it's not an upgrade to those that are living on a high vibration or high frequency. That would be a downgrade. This is what the churches, the mosques, and the temples and the religious houses in America have become today. That's what they are to the people. To the person that's just totally savage, right? Them getting watered down truth and compromised truth is an upgrade to what they were getting before. Them living a half righteous lifestyle is an upgrade, or a half natural lifestyle is an upgrade to what they were living prior to, which was completely unrighteous and completely unnatural, completely savage. However, the churches, mosques, temples, and religious houses that teach these half and watered down truths, for someone that's been living on or oscillating on a high frequency, that would be a downgrade. Why? Because you've become the temple yourself. You've outgrown the temple. There's a hospital is for sick people. You're not supposed to stay in a hospital once you're healthy. You go out there and you make stuff happen. Anyway, that's all I have for y'all. I wanted to point this out, to clear this up, because too many people are more concerned with winning over converts, which equals money, and just being accepted by the world, so to speak, than they are with truth, to the point that they would actually water down and compromise their own truths just for this validation and acceptance of the world. And that is not favorable in the eyes of the true and living God. That's all I got for y'all now. Share, comment, like, subscribe. Until next time, peace.